have mixed feelings about the First Judgment. On one hand, I thought that its story was one of the best in the Yakuza-verse, but many of the detective-focused gameplay mechanics that were meant to set it apart from the mainline Yakuza games were not good at best and downright annoying at worst. Tailing in particular is just a terrible, boring, tedious piece of gameplay, and they put a tailing section into almost every single sub-story alongside a huge number of them in the main story as well. So I am beyond delighted to say that Lost Judgment all but leaves tailing behind. There are still a few tailing sequences, but they are mercifully short for the most part, and some of them switch halfway through to more of a red light, green light minigame. There are still quite a few chase sequences though, and they are still boring, slightly frustrating, and go on for too long. But if a few chase sequences is all I have to endure to experience the magic the rest of the game has to offer, then I guess I'm happy to grin and bear it. The main story itself is perhaps the only thing that I think the First Judgment did a little better, but everything else, gameplay, sub-stories, side content, combat, the world, it's all bigger and better in Lost Judgment. The main story is again a mystery crime thriller kind of thing, and it probably does take itself too seriously for how silly it really is, but that is the charm of Yakuza and Judgment really. What was more intriguing for me was a somewhat sub-main story that runs in parallel with the true main story. You basically start off, story-wise, doing an investigation into bullying at a high school. And that reminds me, we have been asked to give you some content warnings for Lost Judgment because there is some pretty heavy stuff in the game, especially when it comes to bullying. And this is going to make a lot of people feel very uncomfortable, so please keep that in mind before diving into the game. Anyway, after the start, the main story path diverges away from the school, for the most part, though it will still sporadically show up in the main story. The school itself though is what hosts the parallel sub-main story. You become an advisor for the Mystery Research Club, and one of the students, an MRC club leader, Amasawa, tasks you with essentially infiltrating other clubs in the school to track down a mysterious figure known only as the Professor, who has been causing chaos behind the scenes. When I first started playing Lost Judgment, I was a little disappointed with the minigames and side content that was available because it appeared as though all of it was just copy-pasted from previous games. There was the drone racing and slightly Mario Party-esque VR board game, in addition to all the regulars like mahjong, poker, the batting cages, etc. Once things start picking up in the high school storyline though, you see just how much side content there is, and a lot of it is brand new. Each club has an associated minigame or side activity associated with it, along with its own storyline. There's a rhythm game for the dance club. The Robotics Club is centered around a game that vaguely reminded me of Dungeon Dice Monsters. There is an esports club where you have to beat students in a game of Virtua Fighter, and you literally play a port of Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown that's running from within the game. It's not all universally good though. The skateboarding isn't bad, but it is very basic, and the death races were mostly just tedious and boring. Boxing was really interesting though, and overall I really loved this sub-main story. It's especially funny given the tongue-in-cheek irony. The Yakuza series has always been almost a JRPG, until Yakuza Like a Dragon fully embraced becoming one, and it was praised by many JRPG fans for finally being a JRPG with a mature cast and story. You know, not yet another one that's set in a high school. Lost Judgment takes the mature story and mostly mature cast back into a school setting, and it's really a lot of fun. Now, something you should keep in mind if you have played Yakuza Like a Dragon is that Lost Judgment returns to the action combat that the series was known for prior to its very successful foray into turn-based combat. But while some of the older Yakuza games can feel very basic and more like a beat-em-up, Lost Judgment definitely feels more deliberate and less button-mashy. It's probably the best the action combat has ever been in the Yakuza-verse. Multiple different fighting styles which you can switch into at will, each with their own skill tree, and each style excels at a particular type of combat. Snake style is effective at countering and disarming opponents, Crane can tackle large groups of enemies with crazy kicks and acrobatics, and switching to Tiger dials up your single target damage to 11. Something that does carry over from Like a Dragon is the main location of Yokohama. The story moves between Kamurocho and Yokohama fairly often, and you usually have the option to move freely between them at any time, but I'd say you'll be spending at least 70 to 80% of your time in Yokohama. Moving about and getting around is a lot better in Lost Judgment though. Again, probably the best it's ever been. Fairly early on, you'll get access to a skateboard, and this not only increases the speed at which you can move around, but enemies do not aggro while you're skating. It just makes moving from A to B a lot more enjoyable for the most part. All up, I spent just over 70 hours with Lost Judgment, which did complete the story and that sub-main story in the school, but I honestly didn't even get close to doing everything. I'm pretty sure I'm only like halfway to the Platinum Trophy. It's a monstrously large game. There's a Sega Mega Drive emulator in the game with collectible ROMs, a bunch of full arcade ports, all of the other regulars from the series like poker, blackjack, mahjong, koi, etc. And then on top of that is a substantial story, or really like 2 substantial stories if we include the school and its myriad of side activities. I enjoyed just about every minute of my time with it, and if you've never played a Yakuza game before, or the first Judgment, it really doesn't matter. It's time to jump in. Yakuza, Judgment, all of it deserves so much more recognition than it gets. Beautiful recreations of real-life locations in Japan, gripping stories, great humor, and the most varied and enjoyable side content of any game or series, period. Like, subscribe, you know the drill, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.